A face for radio and a voice for mime.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 536 of the Dead Robot Society. I'm Terry Mixon. Joining me, Paul E. Cooley. How you doing, man?
Video killed the radio star. Video killed the radio star.
You're insane. That's how you are.
Yeah, pretty much. Pretty much. That's how things go. I live, I breathe, I'm doing all right. How are you?
That's always the start to a good week when you're still alive.
Is it the start of the week? I don't know when weeks end anymore. I work every day, so I don't really know what day it is half the time.
Good night, Wesley. I'll probably kill you in the morning.
In the morning, yeah. Basically, it's like, oh, Tuesday is DRS day. Oh, Thursday is podcast day from hell. Yeah. Anyway, that notwithstanding. What's up?
Well, I can tell what I've been up to. I want to hear what you've been up to.
What have I been up to? I have been up to getting some writing done, some outlining on the work in progress, and some other zany stuff. So I fired up archivos.digital. If you don't know what that is, go check it out, archivos.digital, and started putting together all the scenes that kept jumping into my head for this book. So make sure to get them down. And then I started seeing the pattern of how one would lead to the next and the next and the next. And now I feel like I know enough of the story to actually get it going. So that was kind of cool. This first time it's happened like this, so we'll see how it goes. But I'm trying to get at least 1,000 words every day, which has been tough. But I'm trying to get at least 1,000 words every day. But every time I sit down and get time to be left alone, I tend to bang out 1,000 to 1,500 words. So just need to stay the course for now.
Consistency is everything, my friend.
Yeah, at this point for things, I just got to get lots of stuff done. So that's what's up in my world. What about you, man?
More productivity and a little bit more chaos with the wife's health. So I was planning on finishing up what I had to write for the next vigilante novel by today, but I'm still 2 chapters shy. So my target now is Thursday.
Thursday. That's a terrible target.
Thursday's a bad target. I should change it to another day just because Thursday is bad.
That's correct. Thursdays never could get the hang of Thursdays. Me and Arthur Dent have got that one down. So
Tree of Liberty, the audio version is live. That happened today. So yay. More Veronica Gier goodness for your ears. What else is going on? That's about it. Writing has been productive. I'm looking forward to getting back to Blood of Patriots. I'm probably going to write a post-apocalyptic short story that will offend everybody in sight. Turn a 13-year-old girl into John Rambo. Well, maybe not that bad.
Oh boy.
Oh, I wonder if I could have her, do the whole Stallone voice.
I don't want to read this. I really don't want to go anywhere near this. No.
I think even knowing who John Rambo is, it probably dates me in a bad way.
Yeah. The only question is, did you read the original novel by David Morrell?
I don't think I did. No.
Yeah. Slackers. God. Movies in the 80s for you? No freaking books?
In the 80s? Yeah, mostly. Who had time for books?
I had time for lots of books. Of course, I'm younger.
The 80s was when I was in the Army. I didn't have a whole lot of time for books.
Yeah, I know. I was starting shit with you. So, what the hell?
That's a terrible transition.
You're right.
That was the worst transition ever.
I've got the pollen apocalypse, trying to kill me over here. So I'm on God only knows how many antihistamines at this point. So, yeah.
If we're going to talk transitions today, which we are, we're going to have to do better than that.
Oh, come on. That wasn't clumsy. No, it was horrible. It was awful. It was just, yeah, I screwed up. My apologies. Get us out of here, Perry.
Let's get to talking transitions. Hello, everybody, and welcome to... Wait. I'm not actually leading into an episode, am I?
No, you're not.
This isn't a good transition.
This is
a terrible transition. Oh.
It would be a good transition if it was meant to be a transition, which it was not. Instead, It was Terry trying to make a very clumsy example of a bad transition.
You know,
Does that work?
as a writer, I live for bad transitions.
Are there any good kind?
Sure there are.
Really?
Where you get to the end of a scene and you start flipping the page going, what? What? That's bullshit. Where's this thing picked back up again? Now, honestly, what I want to talk about, Paul, is transitions. When's the right time to start a transition, a new scene? When's a good time to end it? When's a bad time to end it? And how do we even know when it's the right time to do either of those things?
When I'm bored.
Oh, is that it? I'm bored.
I'm bored. I need to go shake things up somewhere else.
I finished describing this barn in 14 pages. I think it's okay now.
Oh, God, please no. I find maybe, oh God, man, I'm really just walking on my tongue here. That can't be a phrase one hears too often, thankfully. The imagery is a little bit.
The hobnail boots on your tongue?
The hobnail boots on my tongue. Yeah, those. Exactly. When I write the stuff that I write, and since I normally write suspense, the scene transitions and ending the scene, especially once I get past the third part of the book, and it better be happening at the halfway point, is that every scene has got to end with a mini cliffhanger or something that gives you the idea something else is about to happen. And then I switch over to something else. But that's usually a chapter where I'm switching between points of view. In a scene, I may have set up what needs to happen, or they've already gone through one part of it. But since it's leading to another part, and I don't want to deal with the time change or intersperse a chapter in between there, I'll just make the 5 asterisks and then pop in and say, okay, an hour later or whatever. That's what I'm thinking in my head. I don't actually write that. But then we just continue on because they're in the same setting. They haven't moved from the same area necessarily. That's an example of when I would do it.
A good scene break like that would be you're in the science lab and you're wrapping up the scene with what's going on there. And the next scene starts up with somebody leaning forward. Huh, that's funny.
Yeah, that could happen too. Yeah, it will be a scene break. But the transition may be that character wraps up the lab part, and we don't want to spend 15 minutes with that person while they're cleaning up the lab. But we do want to see them leaving the lab because something happens that leads into that next chapter. Or it's something that they needed to notice in 200 or 300 words, and you don't need a chapter for that. So you just incorporate it in the scene, but you want to give it a break so we get an idea there's either a spatial change or a time change, a temporal change. Mm-hmm. There we go.
Some of the stories that I write, not everything is action. A lot of it is insight into the character, insight into the events that's going on, and the scenes need to transition in either when something interesting is happening or maybe a couple of paragraphs before something happens to set the tone of normalcy before something goes wrong. Okay, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
And the end of a scene for me, transition-wise, is when you've gotten all of the critical information, character reactions, action done. It's time to find a place to wrap it up. And that's usually with a sense of foreboding of what's to come.
Right. That's how you want to leave your chapters. Really how you want to leave a chapter.
So I don't want to say that those are cliffhangers because they're not.
No.
But it does let them go, okay, well, we've wrapped up this little bit. Oh, I don't know if that's going to turn out so well for them in the future. Let's read on and find out.
Yeah, I want to leave it somewhere where people are like, okay, they're about to discover something. What was it? And then you have to wait till the next chapter to get to it. That's how you switch the chapters, the scenes. Another thing I will do, and I'm fond of it in my style. Don't know why, I couldn't explain it. But it's one of the things I do with characters is I'll have them do something and I need to impart some information that happened in the past. So I'll have them do something and then we'll kind of fade into what was going on in the past. It doesn't have to be 30 years ago or anything clumsy like that. It just flows into the thoughts. And if you blend it naturally, it's a really nice way to get into the past and see what's going on there. At the end of that, then I will put 5 asterisks and bring him back to the present.
I could sort of see the way you would do that. It's like a character walking through the woods and hearing the howl of a wolf in the distance going, I hate fucking wolves.
Yeah, something along those lines.
And then you fade out and you go, Daddy, what's that noise?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Oh yeah. I'm sure nothing bad is going to happen now.
and I mean that's the whole beauty of it, though, is if you write it that way. And other authors, what they'll do is Stephen King does this, and there are dozens of others. You'll end a chapter or a scene, and then you'll get a date change, right? 30 years ago or whatever, blah, 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 blah. In a lot of cases, I don't really find that's all that necessary. In some cases, it absolutely is necessary if the dates are important. But time can be a relative chunk. You don't have to give an exact date when you do those kinds of things. I just like it when it's done that way. It blends in very naturally, and we can see the character thinking about it now as opposed to when it happened. And it is a really nice way to get across both information necessary to the plot, but even more importantly, is things to know about the character and make them more interesting.
I shouldn't act as though a lot of authors do transitions badly, because it's not an exact science. There's an art to it. And most people that tell stories can figure out within a rough range of places where a good place to pick it up and where a good place to end it is. Almost all the stories I read, it's acceptable. Some of them are better than others, but the transitions are good enough to work. It's rare to find a story where the transitions are totally badly handled. So it's not an art, it's not a science. You don't have to, freak out that you're not stopping it on the exact right paragraph.
No, and I think when you go back and you read, you'll figure that out. If you think logically about it, and I know not everybody does this, but I see it as a TV show or a movie in my head. So my mind is the camera, right? So I'm basically going through, and since I'm looking at it that way, then I'll know if there's a clumsy transition. Then the question becomes, is it a transition that's clumsy enough to have to cut? Is there something I can do to make it less clumsy, or should I just cut that transition altogether? And that chapter doesn't need, or that scene, that denouement to the previous scene doesn't need to be there.
I'll usually find rough spots like that on my read through when I'm done writing.
Exactly.
I'll finish the book, then I'll go back to the beginning and start reading it, but more as a reader than as the writer. And when something is clunky, I go, that's not so great. Let me pull back a little bit here and see if I can find a better way to do that makes me happier as a reader.
Yeah. And I think that's, that is part of just practice. It's part of practice and being self-aware. I mean, when you're writing, it's up to you how self-aware you want to be. But when you're going through that second pass or that first pass after you've written, depending on which nomenclature we're using from Terry Mixon this week, when you're doing that, you have to read it as a reader, and you have to divorce yourself from the fact that you wrote it and the joy of the writing. And now you need to get the brass tacks and buff out the blemishes.
It is what you said. It comes with practice. How many million words do you think you've written at this point, Paul?
Oh, I don't know.
Just as a guess, I'm ballpark for me. I think I've probably written about 3 million words, give or take, in stories at this point. So I've gotten a little practice. I've gotten better than I was at the beginning of this.
Yeah.
And the more you do it, the better you become. At least that's the hope.
Yeah, that is the hope. But I think basically you could stumble and get better. But see, this comes back to being the self-aware part. If you practice, if you play a sport, the muscle memory is attached to the action, but the action is also attached to the brain using strategy to know that this, say if you're playing tennis, it's not just the muscle memory of hitting the ball. It's the muscle memory of your brain saying, oh, that person is standing there, therefore I need to hit the ball here to make sure that to try and make sure they can't get it.
It's like the Babe Ruth thing of pointing where your ball is going to go.
Exactly. So I think when you're done writing, it's basically like, okay, now it's time to go back and start doing those analyses a little bit. No one should strangle themselves in the art of being perfect. Okay. That's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is when you do go back through to edit it, you need to try and look at it with a different set of eyes. And that's the part that comes with practice.
I've thought about that over the last week due to some stuff going on outside of my own writing, and that people that have this idea that they're trying to write something that is great are really shortchanging themselves. They should be trying to write something that's good, because great is almost unachievable. You shouldn't be aiming for greatness. You should just be aiming to tell a good story, tell it in a way that somebody wants to read it. And if they think it's great, that's their call. If you're trying to manipulate things so that you're trying to make something occur in someone else's head, you're almost certainly doomed for failure.
The incipient words of Terry Mixon.
The incipient, meaning I was about to say them.
No, insipid.
Oh,
I said
sorry,
incipient. I meant insipid. I said
like,
it. Wait a minute. That's not the right word.
I don't get it. How does that work?
Incipient.
I can certainly say that I have my share of insipid words.
But
I don't simper.
Not on camera.
Oh, come on.
Well, if I write 70,000 word short stories, then you simper off camera. That's how that works.
I want to have you write a character that goes, "Oh, I do declare."
That could happen. That very well could happen.
I feel faint.
I believe I have the vapors.
Exactly.
But see, then it would only work if I narrated it. See, that's how that works.
Boy, I said, boy, you're about to reach the limitations of my medication.
I'm going to have to steal that one.
I saw it in a meme, so I already stole it from somebody else.
Cool. Then it's absolutely fair game. Absolutely fair game. Clumsy transitions like this one.
I wasn't intending a transition here. This was more like running off into the woods, screaming at something that just happened to catch my attention. Like a squirrel.
Yeah, a squirrel alert. So let me grab the squirrel and drag him back.
Ooh, that sounds painful.
It does indeed.
Don't abuse the squirrel now.
Squirrel nut zippers, baby. Now, can you think of an example of a bad transition?
If you cut the scene off before you've put enough of the danger that you're trying to give, before you give enough tension to the reader, that's a bad transition. If you're setting up something in horror, say, and you cut out as soon as something, what's that sound in the lab? No, that's probably a bad transition point. You want to go a little bit further, seep the suspense a little bit more, and feel the danger coming a little bit closer. Or if you just go ahead and you reach the end of where a scene normally is, and then go on for 4 pages talking about what just happened to you, that's a bad transition.
What's that sound? Is the famous last words of a bad transition. What's that sound? You said that, my mind immediately went, oh, that is so cliche and awful. Please don't do that.
No, the cliche would be seeing a big red button that has a sign that says do not push and having the character go, what's the worst that could happen? That's actually a good transition point. Because then you can prove exactly how bad that idea was. There's probably something to be dug down into with why one is a good transition and one is not.
On the horror side, it's lazy. Suspense side, it is very fucking lazy. In that particular case, if there was something in the lab, I would cut away before they hear it. Or maybe they hear it and they start conversing about it. Maybe they hear something else inside the lab that's a little bit louder. and then they start kind of looking at each other and like, do we want to know kind of deal. And
if they hear a slight thumping and they go, what is that noise? And they walk around the table and they see somebody's hand laying there just out of sight, thumping against the floor as somebody is dying. That's a good place to cut out.
Oh God. Oh
no, you disagree?
Depends. Again, depends.
One of the reasons that I use transitions is to leave people hanging. I want them to go, what? Wait, I'm going to go see what happens to this over here now. But I really want to know what just happened. What just happened over there? I want to know.
Yeah, that's if you got multiple point of views, that is wonderful, because you can leave one group stranded and then pick up the other group and leave them stranded and then jump back over.
I do an awful lot of that.
Yeah, so do I. And once you start doing it, it's freaking addictive. oh, I can leave them here. Screw you. We're going to jump over here for a minute and leave you going, Yeah.
Your readers are laying awake at 3 a.m, flipping that page going, really? Really?
Just one more chapter. Just one more chapter. Yeah.
That's the goal, to have somebody finish your book at 4 a.m. and call you a stinking bastard because they have to be at work the next day.
Yeah. It's a lovely feeling. It's a lovely feeling. The scenes and transitions is go find somebody who's good at it. And most writers do it instinctually. So
it's not a hard skill to learn with practice.
With practice. I mean, everybody knows how to do it. They just don't know. They may not necessarily know they know how to do it. But simple. Think of a TV show where they do the cuts. A good TV show.
Well, yeah. You kind of pick something that you like to watch that's in the same rough genre as what you're trying to write. And you can mine that sort of thing for where a good scene transition actually is.
Or find one that you absolutely loathe and hope never, ever, ever to do in your own writing, your own storytelling. So, yes. Go see how it's done. And then if you feel like you've got a clumsy one, get somebody to take a look at it. So that's what I would do. Transitions can be fun though. They can really, if you learn how to do them right, you can make very masterful. You can really make the story and everything come alive without huge info dumps.
Transitions are something that will help cement readers in your pocket, because if you can do a story where you jump from person to person at the right places in the story, that will cement the bond between the reader and you, and the stories and the style in which you tell them. So it's an excellent thing to continue working on.
Yeah, I agree.
We've talked about transitions in scenes. Is there a bigger form of transition when you're changing characters? Say that there's a different style for a particular character. Is there a way to transition from two distinctly different people from one to the other?
You're talking on the outside of a chapter, well, between chapters, or you're talking within the same chapter?
Maybe I'm explaining it poorly. Let me try a different way. Say you're writing a scene from the point of view of a scientist, working feverishly in the lab and whatnot. Obviously, there's going to be a certain style of cadence to the way action is happening with this character.
Right.
And then at the end of that scene, you transition to the SWAT team leader who's in a firefight with the monster. There's going to be a totally different way of that scene being written. I mean, the style of how things are happening are going to change.
Yeah. If you're doing a stereotypical,
I write stereotypical scenes all the time.
Oh yeah, you're very stereotypical. Whatever the hell that even means. Where did that come from?
I can't tell you.
If you're writing the stereotypical scientist, they're going to be using large words, thinking in large words, putting together large, ridiculous things, and they're going to have probably a slow, insightful cadence. Now.
And they're going to be very deliberative.
Very deliberate, yes. Now, they may be all of those things and think frenetically. Be really excitable, be wearing a Dead Kennedys t-shirt, have a mohawk, the whole freaking 9 yards. and still be a scientist, because the way the mind works is not necessarily indicative of outward appearance or anything else. Very capable of doing that. They can have their own personality, their own cadence of things. But the story overall, if you're writing that scene, unless the scientist is about to get eaten by whatever they're examining, that is definitely going to have a different tone than when you're jumping out there to the SWAT team who's under fire. Completely different cadence of thought, completely different cadence of exclamations. It's a very, very different world. And in that one, I want to go choppier with sentences.
There's a particular scene, I think it was in one of the remakes of Journey to the Center of the Earth. And they had a scientist character in there that he was just your major asshole. And everything he was doing, he was leaving notes in a recorder for himself for his next book. He's always recording everything. And spoiler alert, things happen here in this book. He gets trapped in something they have to cut loose from the ship with a nuclear device inside to stop the bad things from happening. And the counter is like down to less than 30 seconds, and he's recording how he feels about it. And then he looks at the recorder in his hand and starts laughing at himself when the bomb goes off.
Yeah.
Because he realizes how stupid and ridiculous that was.
Yeah.
But your scientists can have any number of quirks. It's their self-awareness of those and letting the reader look into them is what brings them to life.
Yeah, you get to see the outward appearance versus the maelstrom that is going on in their head, or vice versa. You know, they could be the Tasmanian devil, and yet their thoughts are like just, you know, moving from thing to thing very, very slowly, very deliberately. Like, think of the Sherlock Holmes movies, the recent ones, where Robert Downey Jr. is in a fight and he's seeing every move of the fight before and what it's going to do. It's all very deliberate, calm, you know, milliseconds are passing like hours. And he's got all the time in the world to figure out how he's going to beat this chump to pieces. And it gives a very different flow to combat if you've got somebody who's thinking like that. It's an excellent way to do things because it makes that character very unique.
There was a television show that did something like that. It was one of the superhero ones where somebody could repeat their actions. So the character would go into combat and it wouldn't work out for them. And they'd be right back where they started from at the beginning of the combat. And they would go through it and look at what they're going to change as they're doing it. It was very deliberate and amusing to watch that happen.
So basically simulations run by computer or their own hyped up brains to figure out which was going to be the right move.
Exactly.
Gee, I wonder who's done that in 3 books. Anyway, you
were robbed.
The characters themselves can be anything. Their jobs, vocations, yeah, those things have an effect on who they are, but that doesn't necessarily convey who they are. God, we always bring up Dresden. I was thinking Butters in Dresden. Butters is almost exactly who you think he is, except he's not. He fits almost all the stereotypes that are given off by his appearance. And then there are these weird wrinkles around that. And it makes him fascinating because when he does things that are stereotypical, you just kind of giggle because you know that's not really him. It's just fact that he's fumbling around.
It's just the fact of him being himself is amusing in and of itself.
Right, because it's a strange mix of crazy.
Mm-hmm.
All the hang-ups, the neuroses, and everything else is kind of wrapped up into one thing, while at the same time he wants nothing more in the world than to be helpful. You know, it's the Xander thing from Buffy the Vampire Slayer. It's the same kind of deal. I have no superpowers, but for some reason I'm still alive. So that must be a superpower in and of itself. So yeah, I like that those particular details make that character unique, and the way he talks, the way he moves, all of that is very Butters, and it does not translate to any other character. And he's not a major character.
Oh, that's not true anymore.
Oh, okay. Well, in the first 7 books I read, he was a major character.
I will just say that in the last book that I've read of that particular series, his importance level is elevated.
Okay, fair
How's
enough.
that for a spoiler?
Fair enough. Regardless, it just makes me that character keeps popping up.
Trust me when I say that he can take something that is solemn in its own way and turn it into something nerdy.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes. So if you include that kind of thing, how does that character speak? If that character comes across to you that way, or maybe you hear the voice and when the character starts speaking, you hear a weird cadence, maybe go with it, figure out what it means. Where's your brain trying to take you?
Mm-hmm.
Let it take you where it's going to go, and then figure out if it's a good idea or not.
That's true, but I'm going to drag this back to transitions.
Okay, do
it. When you enter into a scene with a new character, the words you pick and the way it goes at the start of the scene have to be appropriate to the behaviors and personality of that character. You have to make it clear immediately who you're talking about,
mm-hmm.
and it has to be in character what they're doing. If you're transitioning from a scientist in the lab to the SWAT guy fighting the monster, the first words might be, "God damn it, where's my fucking grenade?"
Yeah,
or
exactly.
something.
Or stumbling from the stun grenade, he swiveled his head and saw the blood streaks on the wall. Something along those lines. Just basically, it's like, hello, we're now going to drop you in the middle of combat.
Like I said, the transition has to be, it just has to be right there, that the person who's being in that scene dictates how that transition is going to occur.
Right. You're going to give your POV time to settle in, or you just shock the reader by saying, okay, now we're going to dropping in here.
Yeah, transition with, and then the severed head landed in his lap.
I'm such an asshole. This last podcast episode of Destruction ends with let's see, the missile finally hit or whatever, and then the universe became a very interesting place. And that's where I ended the episode. Because I'm a dick.
If it had been a person there, the last line of that would be, well, fuck me.
Well, one of the characters is actually watching the missile go, and then I cut it off right there. So it's just a fun, amusing, nasty, horrible tool to use on readers on a regular basis, and for some reason
you obviously need to have more places you can insert "fuck my life" into your stories.
No. We use those kind of terms when they're about to get eaten. Or the newest complication is so bad and so evil that everybody just goes, you got to be kidding. No. No, this is not happening. Yeah, it's happening.
If it weren't for bad luck, I'd have no luck at all.
Gloom, despair, and agony on me.
Yeah, some days are like that for your poor characters.
In my world, every day is that way. Poor characters. Cadence, speed of thought, all those things in transition, first paragraph.
It also depends on where the action beats in your story are, because the transitions into action beats are different than the transitions into just like a cozy mystery. Cozy mysteries tend to be longer word-wise, more descriptive of what's happening. You're typically not, fighting the black off in the sewers in a cozy mystery. So
if you are, I want to read that book.
Aunt Marple grabbed the scythe and sliced the black in half. No, I guess not.
Miss Marple, don't drink that tea. It's black tea.
Yeah. And sometimes you can write one of these characters and they have hidden depths that most people can't even see, that you as the writer know. And I'm going to use a Star Wars particular scene here. When they were filming Star Wars, the actor that played Grand Moff Tarkin. You know, the
Peter Cushing.
Peter Cushing, that very straight-laced military-looking guy. Most of the scenes that he had were from the waist up, and he was wearing regular trousers and slippers.
That is awesome.
Or even when he had the pants on, he was wearing slippers because he hated wearing those big, heavy boots. He only wore them in the couple of scenes where they had to see the boots.
Absolutely had. Oh, I can understand
so
that.
Other than that, he's there on the scene proclaiming the death of Alderaan in his slippers.
It would have been better had he been wearing Hawaiian shorts.
I don't see Peter Cushing wearing Hawaiian shorts.
Bermuda's
just
Bermuda
not
shorts
seeing
and
it.
Birkenstocks, baby.
Just not seeing it.
Well, you know, if he were in one of my characters, that's exactly what he'd be wearing.
All right, then.
Are we ready to wrap this up?
I think we are.
All righty then.
So, folks, if you'd like to send us a note and tell us what you think about transitions, send us an email at show@deadrobotsociety.com. You can find us on Twitter at Paul_E_Cooley. The best place to locate us is on Facebook at the Listeners of the Dead Robot Society Facebook group. We have to thank the good folks at Podhoster for hosting the audio versions of these episodes for your ear holes. You can find our videos on youtube.com/DRS podcast. And if you choose, you can become a supporter of the DRS at patreon.com/DRS podcast, where for as little as $1 a month, you can get exclusive content and perhaps even have your name read at the end of the show if you are a $10 contributor.
And our $10 patrons this week are JD Barker. Veronica's still telling stories from a padded room with a microphone, Jaguar. Ooh, tell me more. Jack F. Erickson, Kelson, fresh fried fish fresh fried, fried fish fresh.
He got you.
Me. Isabel Cushy, Rick, Eamon to misbehave some Shaw. Lisa Slack. Let me try that again. Lisa Slack, Nathan Cosby, Cheryl Winters, Tracy Bodine, John Kilgallen, Devin Lee, Drew, an alien and a kaiju walk into a bar, Bernardi, Chris Winder, Andre Conde Moraes, TJ Chamberlain, and J.R. Handley.
Thanks very much for your support, guys. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
And with that, we're out of here.
Till next week, folks.
Aloha.